Hey Smauglings, what is happening? This is going to be the review for Star Wars Episode 2 Attack of the Clones, which was directed by George Lucas and stars Ewan McGregor, Nathalie Portman, Hayden Christensen, Frank Oz and Ian McDiarmid with Pernilla August. This is the second installment in my review of the Star Wars films within the prequel trilogy, and this film was obviously much anticipated at the time after The Phantom Menace, and it was a indication that we were getting closer to the story of Darth Vader. We were getting closer to the reason as to why he actually turned to the dark side. And obviously we get the Clone Wars, the beginning of the Clone Wars in this film, so I'm going to be talking about that in this particular review. And regardless of what I actually say in this review, because I will be giving my verdict at the end, but I just have to say that I absolutely love these films. These films are very important to me as a child, and they formed a lot of nostalgia and a lot of inspiration and a lot of creativity in my mind. I love Star Wars, and obviously a lot of people do, and I just want to say that before I actually give my verdict at the end, because there will be a disparity there will be a difference in my love of the film and what I actually give as a verdict of the film. So I'm just going to let you know that right now, but we're just going to get into it. So the film begins with unrest in the Senate, as there is a separatist movement that has been generated, and they are trying to distance themselves from the Republic. They want to act independently from the Republic, and they want to separate themselves, and it's starting to cause trouble. And we see the Padme, who's now a senator. She has left office as Queen of Naboo as her term has ended. She's going to the Senate to debate the issue of creating a clone army for the Republic in order to maintain peace, as the Jedi are struggling to maintain peace themselves. And we see a terrorist attack, which was very timely at the time in 2002 for the Queen, and we also see that it is something that is quite timely in the wake of 9/11, as we see a terrorist attack on the ship that Queen Amidala arrives in, and the star systems are starting to join the separatist movement. We see the Jedi and the senators and Palpatine discuss that in his office, so we see what is actually happening there. And there's dialogue here. Oh no, dialogue in a Star Wars prequel film. Oh no, what's going on here? So this is the first in what will inevitably be a long line of contradictory pieces of dialogue, and that is that Yoda says, impossible to see the future is. And despite the fact they keep talking about the fact that Anakin Skywalker is clearly going to go to the dark side, and Qui-Gon was an idiot for trying to get him into the Jedi Council. And I love George Lucas. I love Star Wars. This dialogue is just not great, and I think he would admit the dialogue is not his strong suit. He's a visual filmmaker, and he needs a lot of help with the dialogue, and he often has people that are helping him with that. And there's obviously a long line of contradictions in the dialogue, and it's fine, it happens, but that is what happens there. And we see that it's 10 years after the events of The Phantom Menace. We see Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi going up in an elevator, and nice little moment here where they're talking about their past adventures, and I quite like this exchange of dialogue. We get the new Anakin Skywalker, played by Hayden Christensen. I think he's quite good, despite what a lot of people think. And I obviously have that nostalgia. I'm at that age now where I do have nostalgia for him, and I'm excited when he returns in the subsequent projects such as Obi-Wan Kenobi and Ahsoka. And I love the fact that he's got a warm reception now, because I always thought he was really good in films such as Shattered Glass and also Jumper. I love that film as well that he was in, with Samuel Jackson as well, actually another Star Wars member there, so that is very cool. And we also get Jar Jar Binks. He's introduced, I should say as well that the Jedi have gone to Padme's apartment to make sure she's safe and to be security for her. So we go there. We see Jar Jar's now a senator. And they go, Annie? Annie, Mr. So happy to see you, Mr. And then he says his Jar Jar dialogue that we all love. And that's what he says there. And his role is thankfully reduced in this film. Now, I've watched a lot of behind the scenes of Star Wars prequels. And Ahmed Best, I'm a fan of. I think he's an awesome guy. And I love that he gets other roles in Star Wars, and I think he's awesome. When he played Karen Beck in the Book of Boba Fett, I believe he played a Jedi Knight during Order 66. He did an awesome job there, and it'd be cool to see more of him. I like seeing more of him himself. But Jar Jar Binks is a tragic figure unto himself. And yes, the Jedi is sent to secure the senator, make sure she's safe. So we're just making sure that she is safe and sound there, and they're acting as security force for them. And when discussing the security for Padme, we get a bit of defiance from Anakin, and in this dialogue exchange, Anakin is basically saying he's going to find out who's trying to assassinate Padme Amidala. And then Obi-Wan Kenobi will say, "We're doing exactly as we instructed, Anakin. Don't go out of bounds, young Anakin." And he's got his awesome Obi-Wan Kenobi dialogue that he says, and we get a glimpse of the darker side of Anakin instantly, just to let you know that this is Darth Vader. There, and I just want to say, Ewan McGregor is perfect as Obi-Wan Kenobi. I think it's some of the greatest casting ever put to film as a legacy character, and love what he's doing here. I think he's always awesome as this character, and he really inhabits this role. Excellent casting. Probably the best bit of casting in the prequels, I'd say, is Obi-Wan Kenobi, played by Ewan McGregor. So that's very cool. And we now see the bounty hunters planning another assassination attempt on Padme. And the attempt to assassinate her happens, and the Jedi are waiting outside, and when they sense it, they go to her room and they try to kill the worm that's trying to assassinate her, some sort of parasite that's going to infect her, and they kill that. And then Obi-Wan Kenobi just jumps out the window onto a robot that distributed the parasite into Padme's room. So he just jumps out, he's off, he's gone, and then Anakin's the one that has to get a car. It's a very odd move. I thought Anakin would have been the one to get the leap out the window, but it seems like Obi-Wan Kenobi beat him to the punch. He's like, "Fuck you, Anakin, I'm jumping up first, you fucking maniac. I'm getting out first." And that's what happens there. And then goes out the window, chase through Coruscant, which is really cool to see the chase through Coruscant, as we never see the seedy underbelly of Coruscant, and that's what we get here, which is really nice to see. And we see Anakin's suicidal tendencies, where he's jumping from bloody miles and miles of height to get to another car, really desperate to get this assassin. Even though he hasn't seen Padme for 10 years, he's very smitten by Padme, clearly. He's trying to get the assassin for her. And we see that the suspect then goes into the nightclub. She is exposed to be a changer, so she is a changeling, I believe. Her face can change, so she takes on different forms, so it's hard to recognize her now, to identify her. But the Jedi go into the nightclub to see if they can find her, and then we see that Obi-Wan Kenobi, in a very nice nod to the original Star Wars, he cuts her in the nightclub, and it's very similar to obviously the Mos Eisley cantina scene in the original Star Wars, where he cuts the guy's hand off. So the suspect is incapacitated, and then Anakin says, "Jedi business, go back to your drinks." And then we go outside and we take the bounty hunter, Sam Wessel, I believe her name is, Sam Wessel. And then we go to her, And then they capture the assassin. Boba Fett, fearing that the assassin is going to reveal information, just shoots the assassin and prevents her from revealing information, as she was going to tell him the bounty hunter's name. And then the Jedi Council, of the moment that they learn of the assassination attempt, they request Anakin to take her to a homeworld of Naboo and travel as refugees to avoid registered transport for her safety, so that she cannot be easily identified, as she's obviously a person of note, as she's a senator, so they don't want that to happen. And we get that Anakin's relationship with Palpatine is grown as well, and it's very heavy-handed. The actors are good. Ian McDiarmid at this point is obviously much more experienced than Hayden Christensen at this point, and he gives very sinister performance as Palpatine, and he's very good at being a very sinister whilst also maintaining the facade of being a chancellor. But he gives a bit of dialogue that's a bit too obvious. He says, "I foresee you becoming the greatest of all Jedi, even greater than Master Yoda himself." And how could you know that at this point? It's very odd to say to someone that is just starting their Jedi training to become Jedi Knight, but that is fine. Palpatine is shit, and he's obviously going to say stuff like that to stir the pot. And then Yoda admits here, interestingly, that the Jedi are going to become more arrogant whilst they discuss Anakin with Obi-Wan and Mace. He's saying that the younger Jedi are becoming more arrogant. I thought this was really interesting. I never caught on to this fact before, that he believes the Jedi are becoming more arrogant as they are being recruited, and he believes that the younger Jedi are becoming more arrogant. I thought that was quite interesting to hear him say that. Definitely in the wake of what actually happens later on. So I like that that little moment was there. And we get Jar Jar here, and she's given something to do by Padme, and it's basically saying, sort of, Jar Jar, get out of this adventure, you're not part of this film. As Jar Jar starts speaking to Padme, and then Padme cuts him off and basically says that you surely have more important things to do, Jar Jar. Please get out of my face. Please get out of my face while I prepare to go to Naboo. And then we get Anakin Skywalker with his bipolar tendencies whilst talking to Padme, and he's talking about Obi-Wan. And he's basically saying that he's overly critical, he never listens, he doesn't understand, it's not fair. And he's basically giving this speech about why he is unhappy with his ranks amongst the Jedi and with Obi-Wan at this specific point. And then we see Obi-Wan in the 50s diner that is a clear homage to American Graffiti, and I love the design of this diner. I don't know if it belongs in Star Wars, it's so out of place. It feels like it truly belongs in the 50s. It is a 50s diner. What is a 50s diner doing billions upon billions of years ago in a completely different universe? What is it doing? But that is the case with that. And he speaks to his friend Dex, and Dex gives him the information about Kamino. He's basically given the information about the dart and where he can find it. So he points him to Kamino, as that is a saber dart that is from Kamino. So Obi-Wan goes to find out what actually is Kamino and how can he actually get there. And I will say here that there's clearly a lot of reshoots in this film. I know films have reshoots, but it's so obvious because I believe Obi-Wan Kenobi, played by Ewan McGregor, was shooting Black Hawk Down at this particular point, and he shaved his head and didn't have any facial hair, I believe. I can't remember exactly, but I believe he did not have any facial hair in Black Hawk Down. And you can clearly see that the facial hair is stuck on and the hair is stuck on because he's shaved head at this point. So I thought that was funny. And they obviously did the reshoots. You can definitely tell in the same scene sometimes where the reshoots are. So that is quite funny. And then Yoda is teaching a class, and I like that we see Yoda teaching, see him actually give teachings to the young Padawans. As I thought he was a grumpy bugger in the last film, and it's great to see him quite fun, quite jubilant. Younglings. You know, he's got his Yodaisms that I really like, and he is more of that character that we see in Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. He's very jovial. I like that. I really did like that, so that is really cool to see. And we arrive at Naboo with Anakin and Padme, and Obi-Wan arrives at Kamino, learns of the clone army created for the Republic, and then we get the legendary speech by Anakin Skywalker when he's talking about sand in Naboo, when he's talking to Padme, and he's basically saying, I don't like sand. It's rough, coarse, and irritating, and it gets everywhere. And you get those brilliant pieces of dialogue, brilliant writing, George, well done, mate. And then we get the beginning of the romance between Anakin Skywalker and Padme Amidala. And then we learn that Jango Fett is the host to the clone army that has been commissioned by Master Sifo Dyas. And we see that we first get the glimpse of the clone troopers that will become very important later. And then we're bouncing between Anakin's adventure and Obi-Wan's adventure here, and we see that Anakin is having a meal with that Padme Amidala. This thing was a bit annoying because they're eating fruit and the fruit is fake. Could you not just get some fruit that's real and paint it to make it look as though it's extraterrestrial fruit and not regular fruit? Because they got fake fruit. Just have a piece of fruit on a string, paint it in orange and blue and yellow just to make it look different, and then you have an alien piece of fruit. But it basically is just a regular pear that they got there, and it's fake, but he's using his force powers to move it to Padme's plate. Just get a real piece of fruit. But that is what is done there. And after that, we get the dialogue between Anakin and Padme. I will say that the dialogue, and this is not something that is obviously new, but I really do think this is the weakest part of these films, and the writing is quite poor in a lot of places, and I hate that I have to be critical about it because I love it. You know what I mean? I love these films, but the writing in this one specifically is very poor, and it's something that really stands out to me when I'm watching it again. When you're watching it with that critical eye, it's really apparent when you're looking at it. And in that particular moment, Anakin and Padme are talking again about the feelings that they're developing for each other. And this is the most egregious piece of dialogue in the film, and possibly in Star Wars. Because Anakin Skywalker, when he's talking to Padme about the fact he can't control his feelings for her, he's really in love with her, he says, I wish that I could just wish my feelings away. You used wish in the same sentence twice. Why did we do that, George? Why did we not have a synonym for wish in that particular point? I wish that I could just wish my feelings away. I wish I could eliminate my feelings for you. So many other variations we could have used there instead of that particular combination of words, which are exactly the same. But that is what he's done there. And I don't want this to be me bashing this film, because that is not the intention here. Because, like I said, love these films. I really do love these films. Grew up watching them, you know. But unlike other films like The Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter, other films I grew up watching, the quality is not as good in this particular film. And we'll get more into that later. But right now, we're going through the plot. But I just want to give that a little bit of a disclaimer. I do love this film. I love the prequels. But I'm just giving this little bit of critical insight here into these moments. And we get Anakin's nightmare. He wants to return to Tatooine because he believes his mother's in trouble, so we go to Tatooine. And then we get Jango Fett leaving Camino, and Obi-Wan places tracker on the ship, and he ends up going to Geonosis. And then when Anakin and Padme go to Tatooine, Anakin learns of his mother's capture, attempts to free her, but she dies. And this is a very sad moment, obviously a turning point for Anakin Skywalker. This is a moment that he lost something that he truly loves, and he was always wanting to go back to his mother's home to see her again. And the music here is very good because obviously you get Duel of the Fates when Anakin is heading towards the village of the Tusken Raiders, which I did like a lot. And then we get the very ominous tone of music, and then we get Anakin's face, who's very unhappy. Obviously, he just lost his mother at the hands of the Tusken Raiders, and then he proceeds to eliminate the entire village of Tusken Raiders. And we don't obviously see it because it's a children's film, so we wouldn't see everything that he's done. But he shouldn't be doing what he's doing if this is a film that's made for children, because he eliminates the women and the children too. And as he said, I slaughtered them like animals. I hate them. And then we actually get that speech that he says. And I don't think the acting in this particular point is bad. The dialogue he's given is not obviously good, because it's so awful. It's such an awful thing to do. Because who can relate to the fact that Anakin killed a village of women and children in this film? That's just a step way too far. You could understand if he killed the Tusken Raiders that killed his mother, or if, as pointed out in an amazing podcast in Last Stand Media, when they did their episode talking about episode 2, they talked about the fact that it could have been that Shmi's husband and Owen Lars go out to the village to see if what has actually happened, because Anakin won't talk, and then they can actually bring up the fact that Anakin's killed everyone in the village, and then Padme can be shocked about what has actually happened. It's weird for him to actually tell you everything that he's done, but that is the Spielbergian thought of revealing all the information to the audience. That fear that the audience won't understand what is in the visual language of the scene, and it needs to be explained to them. And it's excessive in this particular point. And that is what actually happens there. And we learn of the plot that was actually happening here by the separatist movement, this movement that's causing trouble. And we get that Padme was a target for assassination, so that the Trade Federation would sign a treaty, because obviously Padme thwarted their plans in the Phantom Menace, so they wanted assurance that Padme would be eliminated so that they could sign the treaty. So there was a nice little connection there to Phantom Menace. And we see in the meeting, so Obi-Wan Kenobi is spying on this meeting that's happening on Geonosis, because obviously he tracked Jango Fett's ship to go there, so he tracked Slave One to go there. And then we see a range of groups from the galaxy, and they meet and they agree to form the separatist movement to overwhelm the Republic, so that they will agree to any demand that they make. And it's obviously very much a parallel to what's actually happening in America at the time, and there's a lot of political intrigue, and politics is a big part of the prequel trilogy, and that is an aspect that I do quite like. It's fascinating, actually. I really do like that particular aspect of the prequels, because it makes it quite deep and you learn more as you go back and watch them as adults. I really like the political intrigue in the films, and they expand on that within some of the shows, such as Andor as well, which is really good, which I do quite like. And I will say as well, going back to that particular point where Anakin admitted that he killed women and children, Padme says to him, to be angry is to be human. It's a bit more than anger though, isn't it? It's a bit more anger to kill a whole village of women and children, but that's okay, Padme. Whatever floats your boat. But that is what happens there. It's the dialogue. Like I said, because Natalie Portman is obviously a great actor, Oscar-winning actor. One of my favourite actors, actually, because she's given some amazing performances. Black Swan is one of my favourite movies ever. And she's awesome, but just this dialogue that's written here is far from stellar. But someone has to deliver it, so that is what happens there. And Obi-Wan, upon learning of the plot of the separatist movement, he sends a message to Anakin and to Coruscant. And once Anakin learns of this, he goes to Geonosis to see what's actually going on. And then Anakin, Padme and Obi-Wan all get captured after a wacky ride through the goddamn droid factory at a moment that I actually hate. I don't like this sequence at all. The droid factory. It looks like a goddamn cartoon. It looks so bad. It looks really terrible, I think. And it's just really bad to see. I didn't like this part at all in the droid factory. I did like he got different lightsaber. He got a green lightsaber in this particular point. He lost his blue lightsaber. He got it damaged, so I did like that. So that was quite good, but apart from that, I didn't like the droid factory sequence. And then we get the battle in the gladiatorial arena. So I feel like this was quite reactionary to the popularity of Gladiator. The resurgence of Swords and Sandals epic. We get a big, epic gladiatorial arena sequence. And I feel like this was reactionary to that. Which is not a bad thing, because obviously Gladiator was very popular. So it makes sense that other films would follow suit and create similar themed sequences, which they did here. And once that happens, we get an awesome sequence, actually. It's a sequence I really love, which was the Jedi and the droids doing battle in the gladiatorial arena. So we see an army of Jedi, which we had not seen before. It was the first time we were seeing an army of Jedi facing off against a slew of droids, and I thought that was really awesome. Actually, it really looked cool. See so many different lightsabers, so many different styles there. I thought it was really cool. And then we see that Dooku reveals to Obi-Wan moments prior that Darth Sidious is the Chancellor. So we get the revelation that Darth Sidious is actually the Chancellor of the Republic, which we already knew ourselves, but this has been revealed to Obi-Wan Kenobi there. And we see that Jar Jar Binks is given the emergency powers to Chancellor Palpatine. So if you need any more proof that Jar Jar Binks is the worst thing that could ever happen to the galaxy, just look at episode 2, where he gives emergency powers to Chancellor Palpatine, which literally accepts him to extend his term, which is really bad for everyone, obviously, and that's something that Jar Jar Binks does there, which is horrible. That is what Jar Jar does. Is he not the biggest blight on the saga? I just want to say, I really like Ahmed Best, the actor that plays Jar Jar. I'm not going after the actors themselves. I'm not, because I really do love a lot of the actors in this film. I know it's not their fault. It's just the dialogue is so bad, and I don't want to dwell too much on it, but it is just really bad in this film, and it hurts me to say it, quite honestly, but it is the case there. And Palpatine is granted the emergency powers, and he sanctions the creation of a clone army, and there's just a lot of blue screen in this film. Obviously the prequels are smitten with blue screen, But the Phantom Menace really does look good still. I think the Phantom Menace looks awesome. And there's obviously a lot of effects, and they were doing a lot of innovations with effects in that particular film. But there's real locations as well. They were actually in places such as the desert and the fields, and they are here in some particular spots, but there's way too much of an emphasis on blue screen. I believe Geonosis is a complete cartoon. It looks like a cartoon, if I'm being quite honest. Geonosis looks so fake, and it really does date the film quite badly. And that is what happens there. And I will say that Anakin and Padme's chemistry is not great. And it pales in comparison to Peter Parker and Mary Jane's relationship in Spider-Man, which was released the same year. And it's due to the proximity to that film that you see why their chemistry isn't good. Because it is so forced. It's a means to an end, and it's all about Anakin getting from one point to another. And it feels as though this needs to happen because this is how the story goes. It doesn't happen because they actually love each other, it feels like. There are moments where they do share a little bit of chemistry, but it's lifeless. Their acting is lifeless. And it's what they're given, I think, quite honestly. It's not them themselves, it's just what they're given from George Lucas. And that is just what happens there. And as I said, we get the Jedi army that is facing off against the droids, which is really cool. I love that particular point. And we also get Mace Windu finally getting into battle. Really like Mace Windu. Thought he's really cool. And I love the Tarkovsky animated Clone Wars cartoon from the early 2000s, which I always love. I'm surprised by how many people haven't seen that, actually, because it was a big staple for me when I was a kid, was the Clone Wars animated cartoon, the original 2D animated Clone Wars cartoon, where they were essentially 15-minute shorts, I believe, on Cartoon Network. And there's a whole episode devoted to Mace Windu and him defeating an army of droids, and it was awesome. I loved it. And he's got a purple lightsaber, which I think is a cool lightsaber colour. I really thought it was cool. I wish they did have more variation of lightsaber colours, because it is relegated mostly to blue, green and red. And purple is obviously the anomaly. And we get a little bit more, but just not have any colour you want. Why can't you just have any colour on the rainbow? Orange, yellow, any other colour. Why does it have to be relegated to 3 colours mainly? But that is the case with that. And then we get the clone troopers arriving with Yoda. And Mace Windu kills Jango Fett and beheaded him, with Boba Fett actually seeing him there as well. And Boba Fett actually sees his dad get killed at that particular point. It's obviously going to be very hard for any son to see their father getting killed in front of them. And then we see Boba Fett mourning the loss of his father as he pushes the helmet against his head, which is a really cool shot. I really like the shot where he shows Boba Fett holding Jango Fett's helmet against his head. I thought it was really somber, very haunting against the battlefield. Really cool artistic shot, I thought, quite honestly. I thought it was really artistically quite good. And then we see the Republic attempted to defeat the droid army and the droid factories to prevent them from actually manufacturing a mass amount of droids to defeat them. And this is obviously the beginning of the Clone Wars against the Separatist movement. I wonder why they didn't actually call this Clone Wars. Couldn't they just call this Clone Wars? Because I think people would have responded better to that, because obviously this is what is mentioned in A New Hope, the Clone Wars. What is the Clone Wars? They probably would have got more people in the film at that point, because this is obviously the lowest grossing Star Wars film at the time. It was the least successful, probably, because the mixed reception to Phantom Menace, and I imagine some people lost a lot of interest because of that. And I thought it would have been a boost to the marketing if you probably called it the Clone Wars, but that is what happens there. And obviously the earlier Star Wars film grossed less, due to the time, but if you adjust for inflation, this was going to be the lowest grossing Star Wars film and the least profitable. But that is the case with that. And then we get the Death Star concept revealed by the Geonosians as shown in hologram form. And this is something I completely missed. I was happy I got this on this watch, as I've seen this movie loads of times, but I always missed that particular part. And I'm just an idiot. That is entirely possible, but I just missed that part of it. And that is quite funny. I was actually talking to my mate Sunny Game in 2020 about that when we were playing Star Wars Battlefront 2, and it's quite funny that I actually missed that, because it's something that's quite obvious when you see the film. They actually showed the plans for the Death Star in a hologram form. So that is there. I'm glad I actually saw that this time. And we see the scene where the clones are fighting the droids. This is where the effects look really good, actually. We see the dust-covered battlefield and the clones are shooting into the distance and they can't hardly see what is in front of them. And it's really cool, actually, because it's really frightening. Because you don't actually know what's in front of you, but you have to shoot because you hear the noises of the droids in front of you. Really cool sequence, I thought. That was quite nice, actually. And then we see Anakin pursuing Dooku into the hangar bay because Dooku's escaping and we got to prevent him from escaping. Anakin and Obi-Wan face Dooku and they're incapacitated. Anakin loses his hand in the process here. So we get a very short duel here. The duel is very good when it starts because we see Anakin fighting off against Dooku. We see the lovely blue contrasting with the red. Always really visually appealing. Obviously very much reminiscent of the fight between Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker in episode 5. There's a lot of parallels to episode 5 because this is the second installment in this new trilogy, as that was the second installment in the previous trilogy. And I thought that looked really good, and it was cut short, both incapacitated. And we see Yoda. Yoda enters the scene there. The scene that a lot of people have a problem with here. And Yoda's got shit timing. Just as Anakin gets his hand cut off, that's when he walks in, very calm. And a lot of people have a problem with Yoda fighting. I didn't really have much of an issue with it. I don't hold Yoda in as high regard perhaps as other people do. Like, I love him as a character, but he's a Jedi. He fights with a lightsaber. Didn't really bother me that much, but did bother a lot of people. But that is the case with that. And Dooku escapes. Anakin gets married to Padme afterwards. And then we get a scene between the Jedi and the Jedi Council where they say that the war has begun. Obi-Wan says that it's been a victory because of the clones, but then Yoda assures him that it's not a victory at all. The Clone Wars have begun. It's a very dark time. This is going to be a very tough few years ahead of us. So that is the case with that. And then Jedi agree to monitor Palpatine and mimics the ending of The Empire Strikes Back at this point, where Yoda says, "The shroud of the dark side has fallen. Begun. The Clone Wars has." And we obviously get that scene there. And then that is the end of the film. And I really do have to say about this particular film that it is clearly the weakest of the prequel trilogy, in my opinion. And it was tough coming to terms with that, the fact that this one is quite bad to me, but it's a weird review because, like I said, I love the trilogy. I love this story. I love the story of the rise and fall of Anakin Skywalker. It's such a compelling idea. The idea is so compelling. It's one of the most compelling ideas that was ever put to screen. But the execution in this particular point is very questionable. And it is a shame. But at the same time, I grew up watching these films. I played the games around episode 2, such as Star Wars Bounty Hunter, which is a great game. I watched the series. I'm such a big fan of these films, and That's why it's hard to criticize him in this way, because I know objectively that there's a lot of bad in the writing and a lot of the acting and a lot of the effects that are in this film, but it's not so much the actors, it's the direction that they're given. And George Lucas took a 16-year hiatus between the films of Return of the Jedi and The Phantom Menace, and I think because he wasn't heavily involved in a lot of productions during that time, I think he lost the proficiency at filmmaking, and it's an even longer time between The Phantom Menace and his directing, because it was 22 years between his directing in A New Hope and The Phantom Menace, which is a long time, and I definitely think that he's out of practice as a filmmaker here, because he's developing amazing technology that would become very important. And it's funny because I'm watching a lot of documentaries about the making of Star Wars as well, and he seems like a really good guy, like a really fun guy that's obviously made something really incredible. He's made some of the most incredible films ever made, and he'll always be a legend because of that. But this film is bad. It's a bad film, and it really hurts me to say that. And the next film, which will be Revenge of the Sith, will be very different. It won't be the same review that I'm going to give for Revenge of the Sith. So that is what happened there. But Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, I'm going to give a 4.5 out of 10. And it really makes me sad to give that, because, like I said, I love this film. I really do. And I've got that nostalgia for it. But I can't let that conceal what is actually wrong with this film, because there's a lot wrong with this film. And it is one of the worst Star Wars films. Definitely for me. But that is the review for Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, guys. I really did not hate watching this film. It's a fun film because it's Star Wars and there's always that element of magic to it. But this is such a bad film in a lot of ways. But it's one film. It's fine. We'll get on to Revenge of the Sith next. And I'm excited to share my thoughts about that one. But what did you think of Attack of the Clones, guys? Maybe you can convince me otherwise as to why this is a better film than I'm giving it credit for. But I want to hear your thoughts, Smauglings. I really appreciate you. Thank you for sticking with me for this long on this video. I love you all. You guys take care, and I will see you soon. So you guys take care, and I will see you soon.